Okay, so let's start with the prayers. Om Sadashiva
Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam.
Om
Sahana Bhavatu
Sahana
Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavarai. Om Shanti Shanti
Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Everybody.
Om Shivaya, Om Tat Sat.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Okay, so we were on verse number 2 actually. So let us continue with that. All right. So I will chant it and you can chant it with me. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe
Namaste Vyasa
Larvindayatapatra Netra
Netra
Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha
Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purna
Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha
Prajvalito Maya Pradeepaha.
Okay, before I start, is my voice clearly audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just muting all of you and then we can look at the verses.
Yeah, everything is clear.
Okay, so please mute yourself so that there's no disturbance in the recording. So we had already talked about the word meanings of this, which is basically my salutations to you, O Vyasacharya, who has a lot of knowledge, who has a great intellect, and whose eyes are like the petals of a full-blown lotus. And he says also that you have lighted the lamp of wisdom, which is filled with the oil of the Mahabharata. So this has been already conveyed. And we said the name Vyasa basically meant the one who divided the Vedas and also expanded them, divided them by classifying them into 4 Vedas and expanded them by giving the Puranas. Okay, so Purana has got a very nice meaning, which means that which is old and yet fresh. Means the teaching is very old, but the teaching is still relevant. So yes, yet fresh, Puranaha. Okay, so after dividing and expanding, he got the name Vyasacharya. Originally we said his name was Krishna Dvaipayana. Dvaipayana means one born on the island. And Vishala Buddhe. Vishala Buddhe means great intellect. So hey Vishala Buddhe, hey Vyasacharya, your knowledge is very great, not only in terms of how much you know about different subjects, but in terms of the depth in which you know also. This is very important because many of us know lots of things, but we know very superficially. And then there are some of us who are specialists who know everything that is to be known about one subject, but don't know about others. So Vyasacharya here, when you say Vishala Buddhi, it means that not only do you know about lots of subjects, but you also know in depth about all the subjects. So in short, one whose knowledge is vast as well as very deep. Then Fulla Arvinda Yatapatra Netraha. Beautiful eyes like the petals of a fully bloomed lotus or lotus. So here it is Stuti Madhusudana Saraswati is glorifying Vyasacharya. Now remember, if you know the Mahabharata, that Vyasacharya was not supposed to be good looking. Okay, he was supposed to be very, very ugly. And therefore, when you say eyes are beautiful like the petals of a fully bloomed lotus, you have to think of maybe the third eye, the divine eye, the eye of wisdom. That was very beautiful. So you can take it like that because historically, he is supposed to have been very ugly, right? Now, then Tvaya, by you, Jnanamaya Pradipaha, the lamp of wisdom, Prajvalitaha, has been lighted. So you have lighted the diya, the deepaha, which is Jnanamaya, which is full of wisdom. That diya you have lighted up. And what was the oil you chose for lighting up? Bharat Tailaha Purna, with the oil of the Mahabharata. Bharat ka tel jo hai, Purna hai. With the oil of the Mahabharatam, you have lighted the lamp of wisdom. And therefore, I am offering you Namaskara because with that lamp, with that Jnanamaya Pradipaha, with the lamp of wisdom, which is what? Knowledge only. With that knowledge, I can remove the ignorance. And therefore, this is Vyasa Namaskara. Therefore, you have got 4 slokas so far. Bharata Namaskara, Gita Namaskara, and Vyasa Namaskara. And now the rest of the verses, they deal with Krishna Namaskara, Bhagavan Namaskara. So we will look at verse number 3. So please unmute yourself and we can chant it. Prapanna Parijataya
प्रपन्नपारिजाताय
Totra Vetraikapanaye
पुत्रवेत्रैकाणये
Jnanamudraya Krishnaya
ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय
Gita-amrita-duhe Namaha.
गीतामृतदुहे नमः.
So I muted you all, and just one more request. While you unmute yourself, and if you are chanting, and if there's some disturbance in the house, please mute yourself because the disturbance of the house should not spill over into the recording. Okay. During the discussion, anyway, you are muted. But during the chanting, also, I have noticed that some disturbance is coming in from somebody's mic. So if you have the disturbance coming, I mean, we understand that you're in the house and it's not always possible to be alone. But in that case, just mute yourself so that the disturbance doesn't spill over into the class. Okay, so this is verse number 3. And now we have to look at it in detail, right? So, Namaha Krishnaya Astuhu. My salutations, my namaskara to Krishna. Prapanna Parijaya Jataya Totra Vetraya Kapaname something, right? Now here we are saying Krishnaya Namaha. Where is that? The second word of the second line and the last word of the second line. So Krishnaya Namaha, which can be reworded as Namaha Krishnaya, and you supply Astu. So may it be. I give you my salutations for Krishna. The rest are all adjectives for Krishna. So this is the main sentence which is appearing in the second line. So this is the way in which Sanskrit is worded. So as I told you last time, it is not necessary that everything will be in a logical order. It's not necessary in Sanskrit. You can put it in any order because of the way of the language is structured. So here Krishnaya Namaha means my salutations to Krishna. Krishnaya is the 4th vibhakti for those who know Sanskrit, which means Chaturthi vibhakti, meaning for. So Krishnaya, Krishna ke liye namaskaraha. Then the rest are adjectives. Prapanna Parijataya. So Parijatam is a legendary wish fulfilling tree. Okay, so we'll come to that. Prapanna Parijataya, which is a wish fulfilling tree for those people who have surrendered to Krishna. Then Totra Vetrai Kapanaye. For the time being, take it as holding a whip in one hand. I'll explain in detail when we come to the explanation. Jnana Mudraya. So Jnana Mudraya is also called Chin Mudra. The finger touch the first finger, the forefinger, and the thumb touch one another. That is called Jnana Mudra. And Gita Amrita Duhe. So the one who milks the essence, Amritaha, from the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so in short, in English, my namaskara to Lord Krishna, who is sitting in Jnana Mudra, who is like the wish-fulfilling tree for those people who have surrendered to him, who has a whip in one hand, and who is the milker of the nectar of the Gita. Okay, now look at the individual words. Krishnaya Namaha. Chaturthi Vibhakti. My namaskara to Krishna. Then Prapanna Parijataya. So Parijata Vriksh is a mythological tree which is supposed to exist in Swarga, in the heaven. And the speciality of this tree is supposed to be that if you sit under the tree and ask for anything, by your mere asking, the tree will provide you. And therefore, this tree is called a wish-yielding tree. So, Parijataya. Unfortunately, I mean, those trees are not available in this world. Okay, so we have to do with what we have. So here, Krishna is being compared to this Parijata Vriksha, this Parijata tree. What is the analogy? By asking for anything to Lord Krishna. If you ask Lord Krishna for anything, just like the tree gives you anything that you ask for, when you ask Lord Krishna for anything, you will get that. When you pray for anything, you will get that. And you will get what you pray for, whether it be dharma, artha, kama, or moksha. And there is a condition, prapanna. Prapanna means surrender. So prapanna is the condition for getting the fruits of your prayer from Lord Krishna. The condition is that you should have surrendered to Lord Krishna. So prapanna parijataya, for those people who have surrendered to Lord Krishna, he is like a parijata vriksha, the wish fulfilling tree. He will fulfill all your wishes. Then totra vetrai kapanaye. Okay. So you have to break it up. Totra vetra eka panaye. 4 different words come out of that one compound word. Totra means the whip. Totra is Sanskrit for whip. Vetra means handle. So totra vetra means handle of the whip. And ek one, panaye in the hand. So totra vetre kapanaye is the person who is holding the handle of the whip in one hand. Okay, why is he holding the handle of the whip? Why is that referred to as holding handle of the whip? What is the connection?
Because he is riding the
He's
chariot.
a cow herder.
To herd the cow.
You don't use whips to herd cows.
He's the one who
Chariot,
charioteer.
Sarthi of Arjun.
He is the charioteer.
Yeah.
Okay, he is a Sarathi, he is a charioteer. To be driving the chariot, you have to be holding the whip in one hand. So important to connect each and every word, thoroughly understand. Ekapana means he is holding the whip in one hand, he is a charioteer. And it's also got a very important philosophical context. He is Ishvara, he is Jagat Karanam, he is Srishti Karanam, he is the Lord of the universe. And yet, he is functioning as a charioteer. What is the message? Whatever profession you are in, there is no profession below your dignity. So, do it with pride. Whatever you do it with pride. That is what is being conveyed. Do not look down upon any profession. Maintain the dignity of labor of anything that you will do. And Ishvara and Krishna did not feel inferior. He did not say, I am the Lord, how can I be your driver? Because I drive the whole world, how can I drive your chariot? He didn't say that, right? This is the message which is being given. Then, Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya. So, in one hand, Totra Vetrai, the whip is being held. Jnana Mudra is in the other hand. With the help of the other hand, he was holding the Jnana Mudra. The Jnana Mudra, otherwise called Chin Mudra, and this is Jnana Mudra. You know, your finger and forefinger and thumb not touching is Jnana Mudra. There is symbolism for Jnana Mudra. And you see, you have, for example, look at the individual word. This finger, the forefinger, what is it called in Hindi? Anybody? Forefinger, what is this finger called?
Tarjani?
Tarjani. Very
Tarjani.
good. Very good. What does Tarjani come? Where does the word Tarjani come from? Tarjani comes from
Individual.
no. Tarjani means to scold.
You.
To scold or to threaten.
Hmm.
So Tarjani is that finger which you say, "Main tumhe dekh lunga." You know, that is the Tarjani. You are scolding. So in Sanskrit, this finger is called Tarjani. And this Tarjani, therefore, because you are the scolding Tarjani, it refers to the individual, the Jivatma, the finite Jivatma. Right? But remember that the Tarjani word actually means Tarjayati, to scold or to threaten. And that is what this finger you use when you threaten somebody. No? Don't do this to me. Don't you say that? That is why it is there. So it's a threatening finger associated with karma. And therefore, this individual, this Jivatma, who is a limited entity because he thinks of himself as a finite, limited entity and a mortal samsari also. Okay. Therefore, this finite Jiva is threatening people. He is not only a threat to the society, he is a threat to himself also. That is why this finger represents the Jivatma. And this Jivatma is associated naturally with what? With
Jagat.
other three fingers. This Jivatma normally, you take your hand like that and see, normally the Jivatma stays with the other three fingers. This Jivatma stays with these three fingers. Okay. And these three fingers represent the three gunas. Three gunas represent Sharira Trayam, the three bodies. I mean, those of you who have done Tattvabodha, you'll be following what I'm saying. Those of you who have not done, I would strongly recommend you join one of the Tattvabodha classes, because in this Gita class, we don't have the time to go into individual explanations of what Tattvabodha has already covered. Okay. So this is Tarjani, the Jivatma. These are three bodies. And therefore, and very nice to look at. When you open your hand, your thumb stays away. Usually, this is not the way anybody opens the hand, right? You open like this. So this is together. The Jivatma is naturally, by nature, associated with the other three fingers, which are the three perishable material bodies. And the Jivatma is therefore usually associated with the three bodies. Okay, do you follow? That is why, what is the significance of the four fingers? This is the Jivatma, the three bodies. And what is this? This is the thumb, is the Paramatma. And your entire spiritual sadhana, as you will realize during the course of the Gita, all spiritual sadhana is to separate the Jivatma from the material dress that it wears, from the three bodies. As long as the Jivatma is with three bodies, it is finite because it takes on the characteristics of these three bodies because of the association. These three bodies are finite. They are subject to birth, they are subject to change, they are subject to decay, they are subject to death. And when you move to that, you acquire the characteristics of the three bodies, and therefore you see yourself also as being born, decaying, perishing, and dying. So that is taken on by you. And therefore, Krishna is telling us that that particular taking on is a mistake, because you have taken it on because you are associated with other three fingers. All sadhana is to separate the Jivatma from the three fingers. The separation of the Jivatma from the material dresses which it wears, the bodies which it wears, the changing gunas of the bodies, that is the sadhana. And the thumb represents the Paramatma. Can you give me a good reason why thumb should represent Paramatma? Logical reason. Related to the fingers only.
All the other fingers bow towards the Paramatma.
No,
Because
all
Because
all other
nothing can
It reaches
exist
without
Because
without
the
you
the
do
other,
this,
Paramatma.
if you put your finger onto the thumb, it makes a circle, which is the world.
That's not
No.
the, that's
No,
not the
nobody.
All
means
other
that
fingers,
The fingers
Guruji,
cannot be made
the
use of
fingers become
because
inactive without the
Yeah,
thumb.
we can't hold
Absolutely.
anything.
Every action
Fingers
the
are
thumb
completely inactive.
I'll mute you and I'll tell you what somebody said. I don't know who said that. The fingers cannot, other four fingers cannot function without the thumb. Anything you want to do, the finger has to come to join the thumb. It is therefore the thumb which is so powerful that it is the support of the other two fingers. Without that, the fingers are inactive. And therefore, Paramatma is the adharam, the support for the entire creation. The entire creation is the three bodies and the jiva. Together with the three bodies, consciousness forms the jivatma. So that represents the entire creation. The thumb represents Paramatma. With the help of the thumb only, the creation is sustained. Now, when the jivatma moves away from the three bodies, it moves towards the Paramatma. And then jivatma and Paramatma join together. When they do that, the jivatma has moved away from the other three, which is the three bodies. And what is the uniqueness of this shape? It is a circle. That circle has no beginning and it has no end. The difference between the jivatma and Paramatma is wiped out when the circle comes. When the jivatma is away from the Paramatma, there is a distinction. There is a jivatma, Paramatma, bhedaha. Distinction is there. When it joins the thumb, jivatma, Paramatma, aikyam is there. The identification of the jivatma with the Paramatma takes place in this. That is unique. And therefore, Purnam, Anadi, Anantam. And the circle is complete because there is no break. Anadi, a circle has no beginning. Whichever point you put at, there's a previous point. And Anantam, the circle has no end. In a circle, you cannot distinguish a beginning, an end, and parts. So this is the philosophical significance of the Jnana Mudra, also called the Chin Mudra. So this particular posture indicates that you are a sadhaka. You are trying to detach from the three gunas, detach from matter and attach to consciousness, detach from anatma and attach to atma. Normally what we do, we detach from Paramatma and attach to everybody else around us. So that is that particular verse.
So the three fingers, which represents the three bodies, can we also say that they also represent the three gunas, which is Satya, Rajas, Tamas?
Are the bodies different from the gunas? No. When you say body, you mean three gunas. Again, Tattva Bodha.
No,
The
we are saying
moment you say matter, you have said three gunas.
we are meaning bodies as the gross, subtle, and causal, right?
Yes. All the three bodies have got three gunas, have they not?
Okay.
Okay, so remember that Tattva Bodha has to be kept in mind throughout. Whenever you say matter, you mean three gunas. Whenever you say body, you mean three gunas. Whenever you say mind, you mean three gunas. There is no body without mind. There is no mind without three gunas. There is no intellect without three gunas. The moment you say body, you mean three gunas. So prakritehe gunehe. The very product of the three gunas is prakriti, which is the nature, which is matter, which is your body. Okay, and therefore I'm again repeating, those people who are finding it difficult to understand, please do join up Tattva Bodha classes. We run them throughout the year for this very purpose. One gets over, another starts. And therefore it's always useful. In fact, some of you have been there for more than 1 or 2 years in this particular batch. You will be the best witness to say that Tattva Bodha never gets old. The more times you go to that course or attend the course, the clearer your mind becomes on these things. All right.
Is there any particular representation of that finger, like little finger causal or middle finger? Is there any particular representation of the fingers?
I just said three bodies.
Yeah, so between these three fingers, I'm asking, is there any like ring finger represent causal?
No, we don't go into
or-
all that. And I'll tell you why we don't go into all that. That the symbolism is for understanding. There is no point in getting deeper into that because you can say anything. So we don't do that. We just give you what the Shastram has said. Shastram doesn't go beyond this. So if you are hearing anybody else say anything, that is his own interpretation. I will strongly discourage you all to try to go into places where the scripture does not talk about, because there it is the product of a human mind. Scripture is not the product of human mind. Therefore, we can take scripture as authentic. But the moment somebody tries to give an additional interpretation in accordance with his own intellect, you are back into a human mind. We strongly discourage that, because every word which is said here will be interpreted strictly from the scriptures and has the backing of Shankaracharya. So if that is not there, I will not talk about it. I will strongly recommend that you people also do not, enter into that field, at least for a long time, so that your mind clarity remains there. Because confusion can arise from reading too many interpretations. I hope I'm clear. The initial stages of your study, it is important for you to focus clearly on what is being said. Avoid even extracurricular reading, because to confuse the mind is very easy. After a couple of years, then whatever you read will make sense in the light of the teaching. But at the moment, don't do that. Okay.
So, so last time when I attended the Dhyanam with Shivani ji, the tamas was like, I don't know if it was from one of the audience or it was from Shivani ji, but she said that the little finger, I mean, I don't know who said the audience or Shivani ji, but little finger is tamas, middle finger is sattva, and ring finger is rajas. So should I remove that from my notes?
You will have to ask her on what is the basis. And one more thing is that kind of interpretation has, that kind of detail has no relevance for us, because the very tatparam of Shastram is what? It is that Anatma is Mithya. And therefore we look at Anatma, we understand Anatma, but we don't go into such kind of details. Okay? All right.
Acharya, so can we get the reference, like where is this been quoted in the Shastras, like how we are talking
This
about
particular
this?
thing, I don't know. I'm going by what my Guru told me. So for me, his word is Shastra.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Om sir. So, so we understand why is it called Jnana Mudra, but is there a reason why is it called Chin Mudra?
No, it's just another name, that's all. Chin means consciousness. Chit from the word chit, consciousness, awareness, and therefore jnana. Without consciousness, you cannot have jnana, right? So that is the connection. Okay, now let us go to the 5th verse and we will chant. So please unmute yourself. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansa Chanura Mardanam
Murmurmardanam.
Devaki Paramanandam
Paramanandam.
Krishnam Vande Jagadguru.
Krishnam Vande Jagadguru.
Now look at the words. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Param Anandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. So Vande Krishnam. So you have to add, supply Aham. Aham Vande Krishnam. I salute Lord Krishna, who is Devam, who is the Ishvara, who is the Lord. At the same time, Jagat Guru. He is the teacher he is the Guru of the world. And Vasudeva Sutam. He is the son of Vasudeva. And Kansa Chanura Mardanam. He is the destroyer of the demons called Kamsa and Chanura. At the same time, Devaki Param Anandam. He was the great joy for his mother Devaki. The full meaning. So Krishna Mande, I offer namaskara to Lord Krishna because Krishna is great. And why is Krishna great? You have three descriptions of the reason why Krishna is great. So these are adjectives, okay? So Vasudeva Sutam Devaki Paramananda. So the Lord who is the son of Vasudeva. And not only is he son of Vasudeva, he is Devaki Paramanandam. He is a great source of joy to Devaki, his mother. Therefore, as a member of the family, Lord Krishna was a joy to his family members, indicating that your duty begins where? At the family level. And therefore, you have duty to the family, you have duty to society, and you have duty to one more. What is that? There are three essential duties for all of us. One to the family, that's indicated here by Devaki Paramananda. One to society, I'll tell you that is also indicated. And one for posterity also. One is the duty to your future generations. And therefore, Vasudeva Sutam Devaki Paramanandam indicates Krishna's contribution to society, to the family. And what did he do for society? Kansa Chanura Mardana. Kamsa Chanura Mardanam. He destroyed the Asuras, Kamsa and Chanura, who were a threat to the peace of the society and who were adharmic in nature. So such people, Lord Krishna destroyed and saved the society. So Vasudeva Sutam Devaki Paramanandam, indicating duty fulfilled to family. Kansa Chanura Mardanam indicates duty fulfilled to society. So, and what was the contribution to posterity, to the future?
His
Jagadguru.
teachings.
Jagat Gurum Krishna. Contribution is by way of Bhagavad Gita, by way of the very teaching itself. So these are three levels at which duty has to be for all of us, not only for Lord Krishna. And therefore he taught the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And of course, through that teaching, it was not just Arjuna. The teaching, through the teaching, he gave it to the entire society. So contemporary, of course, in terms of history, we say this is about 3000 BC, right? But in terms of your, if you try to get the time according to your, what do you call, Puranas, then it was an earlier, session itself. It's not in this Kala Yuga, it's an earlier Yuga, right? This Bhagavad Gita was in which Yuga?
Dwapar Yuga.
Right. So earlier Yuga, right? So, and Yuga is, as we'll see in a much later chapter, Yuga is an element of time which is not in terms of thousands of years. It's hundreds of thousands of years. So anyway, from the point of view of understanding, because all of us have scientific minds, scientifically Bhagavad Gita has been, or Mahabharata has been dated around 5,000 years ago, 3100 BC or something. We can take it at that. But if you take it as what the Shastram says, then it's many, many thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years before that. But even now, that Gita is fresh, teaching is absolutely relevant, and helps all of us. So to those who have studied the Gita, to those who have been exposed to the Gita, they will know that the teaching of the Gita has always been helpful for them throughout their lives, not only in times of crisis, but in times when they're happy also. That teaching has made them very peaceful. And to that wonderful Lord Krishna, who gave us this beautiful teaching, this eternal teaching. Why eternal? Because it was valid when it was given thousands of years ago. It is valid today also. And that is a wonderful teaching, to the eternal teaching, I give my namaskara. So two Krishna namaskara verses are over. Now there is a third verse. This is verse number 6. It's a bit of a tongue twister, so we'll go slowly. Please unmute yourself. Bhishma Drona Tata Jayadratha Jala.
Bhishma Drona Tata Jayadratha Jala.
So I can see that most of you all don't attend these chanting classes. That is why you're stumbling. Okay, I would suggest that you really go for chanting classes. Otherwise, you'll be struggling with it throughout the Gita. So Bhishma Drona Tata Jayadratha Jala
Bhishma
Bhishma
Drona
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 Tata Jayadratha
Gandhara Nilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani
Shalyagrahavati
Kar Karanena Velakula Ashwathama Vikarna Ghora Makara
Ghora Makara
Duryodhanavartini
Vardini
Sotirna Khalu Pandavairana Nadi
Sotirna Khalu Pandavairanadi
Aivartakah Keshavaha
Kaivartakaha
Okay, so I muted you all. Now look at the words. These are a bit longer words, so you'll have to be very careful about them. So we'll say, what are the sentences? Kaivartaka Keshavaha. Look at the two words. Kaivartaka Keshavaha. So Kaivartaka is a boatsman, the one that the one who takes the boat through. Keshava is Krishna. Lord Krishna is Kaivartaka. He is a boatsman, the one who knows how to ride the boat. Because he has been steering the boat of the Pandavas. And the boat of the Pandavas is what? Is in the battlefield. Their life has been about the battle. So in the worst of all seas, in the worst of all oceans, this Kaivartakaha, this pilot, can drive the boat without any problems. And in this beautiful verse, this Mahabharata Yuddha, war, is compared to a river, a very strong river with lots of strong, what do you call, streams up and down, waves, very treacherous river it is being compared to. And he says there are so many varieties of dangers lurking. And the Pandavas have to cross this river to save themselves. The river, remember, is supposed to be the war. And it's a huge war with lots of very strong warriors. And therefore, all that troubles are compared to the strong waves in that particular river. Because this is the biggest crisis of their life. And similarly, for human beings, so every situation has to be linked to us. For every human being, there will be a situation in life where there will be a lot of difficulties and there will be a lot of dangers and a lot of problems. So what are the dangers involved in this Mahabharata war? What are the waves they are being described here? So if Mahabharatam is the river, then the river has what? Two sides, two banks. And what is the purpose of those banks? The banks of the river decide in which direction the river flows. So bank is called Tata. Tat is a bank. As you may find, the Tat is a bank. So he says Bhishma, Drona, Tataha. The Bhishma and Drona are the Tata, the banks of the river. And because they are so powerful, these two warriors, Bhishmacharya and Dronacharya, extremely powerful warriors, especially Bhishmacharya, who was given the Ichhamrityu, boon. He could die at his own will. Nobody could kill him unless he wanted to die. And such powerful warriors can decide which way the war will turn. What will be the result of the war? They can decide. So just like the river's direction is decided by the Tata, by the banks, the direction of the war can be decided by these two warriors. And therefore, Bhishma, Drona, Tataha. These two powerful warriors, they can decide in which direction the war will go. Whether Pandavas will win or Kauravas will win can be decided by the combined power of these two warriors. That is why they are called the banks of this particular river of war. Okay. Then Jayadratha, that's a person, that's a warrior. Jayadratha Jalaha. Jala is the waters. The water of the river is none other than Jayadratha. Jayadratha was the king of the Sindhu Raja, king of the Sindhu Raja, who was also on the side of the Kauravas, and he was very powerful. And therefore, like the river, one didn't really know how much strength that he had. And therefore, they use the word Jalaha. He is like the waters whose depth you really cannot know looking at from outside. From the stiller it is, the deeper it is. And here also the Pandavas had to be facing. So this is what they're saying here. He is like that. Jayadratha is that powerful warrior who can spring surprises because you don't know how deep he is, you don't know how strong he is. And then Gandharani Lotpalaha. So Gandhara. Gandhar is who? The king of Gandhar Desha. The king of the nation called Gandhara. And who was the prince of Gandhara?
Shakuni.
Sakuni. So you can, and the Gandhari is the daughter from Gandhara Desha. Therefore, Gandhari's brother and father, especially brother Sakuni, is compared to Lothpala. Lothpala is a lily. It is a blue lily in the waters. And those of you who have lived in the village will know that where is the blue lily found? It's found in the nearer the banks of a river. And the problem is that the blue lily becomes really flowers only when there's a lot of mud, a lot of slush is there. And so you say that wherever you see there's a blue lily, you don't go there. Why? Why should you not go and pluck the blue lily from the river?
Because of the
Because you can
danger,
step to
danger
the
of
slush.
drowning.
Because of the slush, and you will get trapped. So this blue lily, wherever it is there, you should not go because it's very deceptive. And therefore, Sakuni is compared to the blue lily. Sakuni, as we all know, was an extremely deceptive person. So he's compared to the blue lily. Then Shalya Grahavati. So Shalya is another king. He is the king of Madra Desha. And from Madra Desha, who came? Which character in the Mahabharata came?
Madri.
Madri.
Came. Madri is the wife of Pandu. It's not very prominent because Pandu died, but Madri is the wife of Pandu. So this king of Madra Desha is called Shalya. And very powerful warrior. But he joined, he didn't, and he was related to the Pandavas. But unfortunately, he joined the Kauravas. Okay. So he's being compared to what? He's being compared to Graha. So Graha is a crocodile. So he says very powerful like a crocodile. So that's what it means. Shalya is being compared to crocodile. So each word is beautiful in the way it's derived. Then Kripena Vahani. So Kripa is Kripacharya, another very great warrior who was also the Acharya, who was also the guru of the Pandavas. He taught them, along with Dronacharya, he taught them the art of archery, bow and arrow. So he's a teacher of the Pandavas and a very powerful warrior. Unfortunately, he's also on the opposite side. And he is like Vahani. What is Vahani? Vahani is not the current of the water on the top. Vahani is called the undercurrent. So if you enter a river, like for example, if you ever been to Rishikesh and entered the river at the bank, you will know that on the surface, the Ganga is calm. When you look at you don't see a very strong current flowing. So you think that you can, step into the current and there's no problem. It is a moment you step in that you feel that your legs have been caught by the current when they're pulling away. So it is the undercurrent, not seen above. So hidden strength, that is what is being referred to. And this kripa was the powerful undercurrent. Okay. Each description is a description of the strength of the obstacles which are being going to be faced by the Pandavas. Then Karnena Vela Kula. So Karna was Vela Kula. Akula Vela. Akula means what? Very turbulent. Up and down always. Vela means waves. So Akula Vela, Vela Akula, turbulent waves. And who was that? Karna. Karan was very powerful, like the waves of the ocean or the river of Mahabharata. Then Ashwathama Vikarana Ghora Makara. So Makara is again shark, and Ghora means terrible. So Ghora Makara, the terrible sharks, flesh-eating sharks who will kill you immediately. Who are they? Ashwathama and Vikarana. Ashwathama is the son of Dronacharya. Vikarana is the brother of Duryodhana, son of Dhritarashtra. And he says they are all like this flesh-eating terrible fish, Ghora Makara. To battle with them is to invite certain death. Then Duryodhana Vartini. So break it up into Duryodhana Avartini. Avartini means a whirlpool. And if you know what that means, when you get caught in the whirlpool in a river, you will be just sucked away into the river. And who is that? Duryodhana is the powerful whirlpool in the river Mahabharata. Then Rana Nadi. Rana is battle, Nadi is river. So Mahabharata is being referred to as Rana Nadi, the battle which is a river, constantly flowing battle. And then he says, Sotirna Khalu Pandavai Rana Nadi Kaivartaka Keshavaha. Sotirna is Saha Uttarina Rana Nadi. Saha Rana Nadi, that Rana Nadi, that river of battle. Khalu means, Khalu is a participle meaning indeed. Khalu Uttarina. Uttarina is to be crossing over. So Sotirna Khalu Pandavai Rana Nadi Kaivartaka. That Saha Rana Nadi, that river of battle, Khalu Uttarina, can indeed be crossed over by whom? Pandavaihi, by the Pandavas. How was it possible? Kaivartaka Keshavaha. That is possible only because Keshava was the pilot of the boat in the battle of the Mahabharata. This means what? Madhusudana Saraswati is saying that when a situation in your life comes, when you find yourself in a battle like this, doesn't mean you're going to fight a battle. But everybody has troubled situations in his lives where there seems to be no, future at all. The obstacles are so many. There are so many problems in our life that we don't see how we can move forward. So Madhusudana Saraswati is saying that when such a battle comes, you have to find that boatsman who is Lord Krishna. So which means that at that point of time, just start to pray to him, surrender to him, and you will be able to cross even the most turbulent time in your lives. Very beautiful little verse. Okay. Now,
Raviji,
yeah,
can you just tell me Stotirna meaning ji?
Saha Uttarina. Uttarina means crossover. So the problem with Sanskrit is that if you look at it in the running, it will not make sense. You have to break Saha
split.
Uttarina, split it. That Saha has to be connected to Rana Nadi. Saha Rana Nadi, that river of battle, Sotirna will be crossed over. Khalu, indeed, Pandavai, by the Pandavas, Kaivartaka Keshava, with the help of the boatsman who is Kaivartaka. So remember in Sanskrit that you have to break and rearrange the words. That is what we are doing in the Anvaya. Okay. Om.
Bhishma, he's like revered as such a knowledgeable man. Like when you read Mahabharata text, he's always like given a lot of, he's taken as a very like man with a lot of knowledge in everything. But the fact that people like him and he himself, they chose to be on the side of Kauravas because they had certain promises and they wanted to keep up with the promise. Basically, they overlooked the dharma part, that what is dharma, but they went by what their individual promise is and not the overall dharma, means that they were not jnanis.
It is not promise you're talking about. It's talking about duty. You see,
Yeah.
let me give you an example. Tomorrow, if somebody, attacks your daughter, what would you do? Would you kill that person to defend your daughter?
Yeah.
Then it's the same thing. Remember that duty versus dharma is always a very, very difficult choice. Normally, you would prefer to do your duty even at the cost of dharma.
No, but if somebody is attacking my daughter, that itself is adharma. So I'm doing duty and dharma both.
Yeah, but then here, you remember what Bhishma's promise was, that he will stand by the throne always.
Whose promise?
Bhishma had given a promise to his
Father,
his
Shantanu.
father, that I will always by that throne. So that's, so the whole purpose here is to understand all human frailties. That's why it said that whatever is there in the Mahabharata will be found in the world also. And so we will look at it that way. Okay,
So
let's try.
ultimately, Krishna is teaching us that, you look at the overall dharma and not by your individual duty.
It's not possible.
No.
It's not possible. You have to understand this in terms of difficult situations in life and attachments. The teaching is definitely there. Going by that teaching, I mean, none of these people should have been on Dronacharya's side, on Duryodhana's side, but they are all bound by their duties. Okay,
Yeah.
that is what you have to understand. The duty and dharma conflict has been there for 10,000 years, will continue to be there for the next 100,000 years. How to deal is what we have been taught. Okay, verse number 8.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, please.
You said that Bhishma and Drona, they could actually decide who can win the battle and who can lose.
Yes.
If that was true, why did they not decide that Kauravas win?
Well, Krishna was on the other side. So it's all figurative, no? You have to understand everything is figurative. They are such a type of two warriors who can decide how the battle flows. But the very Lord is standing on the other side. Krishna is on the other side, right? Even though he's not fighting, he is your opponent. So what is he saying? That however strong you are, when you come up against the Lord, you will lose. You need to be circumspect. See, our problem is, like we try to have understandings in terms of yes and no. The first thing you have to learn in Mahabharata is there is never any black and white. Everything is in between. Shades of gray. You have dark gray, you have light gray, you have medium gray. That uncertainty you have to accept because that is how your life is. Your life never has any yeses and nos. It's always, you take a decision, yes. But you take a decision among very many options. Clarity of yes and no on these options, how often does it come to us? That is why Mahabharata is so great because it captures all that. And when we are studying, let us understand it in that manner only. Not try to see for very clear black and white situation anywhere. Okay, I'm just unmuting all of you. We'll look at the next verse, which is verse number 8. So we will chant that. This will be the last verse for today. We might run a few minutes over, but anyway. Mukam karoti vachalam.
Mukam
Karoti vachalam.
Pangum langayate girim.
Langayate girim.
Yat kripa tamaham vande. Paramananda madhavam.
Paramanandam.
Let me mute you all. Right. So, aham vande, I salute tam, tam is you, Krishna, who is what? Paramananda Madhavam, who is the nature of fullness alone. Parama Ananda, and Madhava is the husband of Lakshmi, and Yat Kripa, whose grace, Karoti, makes Mukam Vachalam. Mukam means the one who is mute, the one who cannot talk. Vachalam makes him talk. So he says this Krishna is capable of making the person who is mute, he can make him talk. And Pangum Langayate Girim. Girim is mountain. Langayate means to climb. Pangum is one who is lame, one who has got a defect in the leg. Therefore, the grace of Lord Krishna can make the mute person talk and make the lame person climb a mountain. Essentially saying that it can make what is impossible happen. Now look at the words. Paramananda Madhavam Vande. I salute Madhava. Madhava means Lakshmi Pati, the husband of Lakshmi. So here Ma can be taken as Lakshmi Devi, and Dhava means the one who is constantly by the sides, consort or husband, and therefore Madhava means Sripati, Lakshmi Pati. And this Madhava is Narayana. What type of Narayana? Param Anandaha. So naturally, if you have Lakshmi in your hands and lots of money in your bank balance, you will be Ananda only, right? Who will not smile? And therefore, Lord is very smart. Normally, everybody doesn't have too much money, but Lord has kept money there. So naturally, Paramananda. And it is not wealth just in the form of money. The greatest wealth, remember, is wisdom. And so Lakshmi is a source of Ananda only when Saraswati is there, right? So what does the Lord do? Mukam Vachalam Karoti. He makes a dumb person, a mute person, an eloquent speaker. When? Only if he surrenders to the Lord. So this Lord can do anything. He is Shaktiman. He is all powerful. And he gives one more example. Pangum Girim Langayate. He can make a lame person also climb this mountain. How? Yat Kripa. Yat is Madhava. So Yat Kripa means Madhava Kripa. With the grace of Madhava, all this is possible. Tam Madhavam, that Madhavam, Aham Vande, I salute. So for us, the Gita students, which is this Girim, which is this mountain? The mountain is the Gita because there are 700 verses over there. And therefore, if you feel that the mountain is very high, you have to do only one thing. We have to surrender to Madhava. Then only can you successfully complete the study, which is climbing the mountain. And that is why we are starting with a prayer. Okay, so with this, we'll stop. I think there are 2 more verses, which we can probably do in the next class. Any questions? Otherwise, we can carry on. Any questions?
Oh, Acharya,
Yeah.
No, Acharya.
should we get a little glimpse of like these characters in Mahabharata? Because if we do not know like who is Bhishmacharya or anybody, do we recommend us to go through?
If you have no exposure to Mahabharata, you should probably read up. But basically, remember that in this, once the Gita starts, you will have predominantly only Arjuna and Krishna as characters. No other character enters the picture. In chapter number 1, many references are there, but they are basically to all the warriors in the field. So the story itself, you will understand why the background was there. But it's not important to the teaching of the Gita. So if you are trying to understand the Gita itself, it's not important. But as an Indian, I would recommend that, yes, you should definitely read the Mahabharata. There are so many versions, there are small versions also, 200 pages, 300 pages. You can have a look at them. They will give a background of the whole story. It'll definitely understand and help you to understand why this has occurred, why the war occurred. That's all. The teaching is independent of the war.
Okay. So, do you recommend any book to go?
I think there's one by Rajgopalachari, there's one by Kamala Subramaniam. All
Okay.
the decent ones. Don't look for the new authors, okay? There are many people who call it My Mahabharata and all that, so don't look for that. I would recommend the one by Kamala Subramaniam. That's really good. I've seen it. And if you want a smaller book, then there's one by the earlier president, Rajgopalachari. That's tiny, but it's good enough.
Okay. Thank you, Acharya.
Okay, so with this, I'll stop. Thank you for your patience. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya,
Purnam Eva
Shanti.
Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Tat Sat.
Thank you for your patience.
Om Tat Sat, Om Namah